Welcome to the Hidden Homestead. My name is David, and today we are talking about the Ruger RXM, and quite frankly, why I love this gun, or have come to love this gun, and how it is going to possibly create one of the biggest Second Amendment fights that we're going to see in the coming years. Quick edit, because of the name of this video and the thumbnail itself, I'm sure a lot of you are here to get the most up-to-date news for what's going on with Ruger. That said, I started this video out originally to be a review on the RXM itself, so I'm going to go through the review that I did on it, I'll give you my opinion for whatever that's worth, and then we'll transition into the news of what's going on. Now, if you want to skip forward, I will leave a timestamp right here so that you can move forward to get that legal battle of what's going on. But if you want to see my review, let's go ahead and get into it. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about this thing. This is the Ruger RXM. And if you don't know, basically Ruger and Magpul got together, did a little bit of Netflix and chill, and then they had the RXM. As far as I know, it is basically designed by Magpul and built by Ruger, except for obviously the polymer frame right here. And we'll get into all that. So why has this become one of my favorite handguns? Well, the first thing this is a Glock clone. It's a Gen 3 clone. And there's tons of those out here in the Gunniverse. But I honestly believe that this one is special. And the reason being is because Ruger and Magpul could have just stopped at making a Gen 3 clone, right? They could have just stopped right there, but I believe what they ended up doing was looking at everything out there, and they essentially took the best features out of the most popular handguns and sunk it into this thing. On top of that, they took what most people end up changing on a stock Glock and went ahead and added to this thing. So first things first, like I said, it is a Gen 3 clone, and what that allows is the compatibility of all the parts. I mean, Gen 3 Glock has a full ecosystem. Like it or not, and arguably, the Glock 19 is the most popular handgun in the world, and this is based on that Glock 19 platform. So you have this full ecosystem of parts already available that you can switch out on this thing, or if something wears out, if it breaks, or if there's something that you just kind of don't like, you can switch it out, no problem. So that right off the rip is pretty great. Now let's move to the sight itself. First of all, you have suppressor height night sights. That's one of the first things that people change out on their Glocks, because arguably Glock sights, stock Glock sights, are pretty terrible. They're polymer sights, they're really low, and these allow you to not only shoot at night, but depending on the optic, you can co-witness with this thing, which is really nice because they are a lot higher. Speaking of the optic, Glock has the MOS system, the modular optic system. Quite frankly, it's not really that modular, just because you have to, for the most part, you have to buy an adapter plate depending on what optic you end up running. So what Ruger did was kind of copy the Springfield Echelon. I think there might be a couple more that's done it, but they copied it to where this optic footprint is truly optics ready. It's ready. You do not need an adapter plate, and it will run your RMR, your Delta Point Pro, and your RMSC footprints, depending on which optic you decide to put on there. So that's going to end up saving you 60, 70, 100 bucks, depending on what plate it is and where you get it from. So you're just adding to the value of this thing because you just saved the end user more money, and it's a lot easier, and it sets a little lower, which is nice, again, for co-witnessing with these sights. So again, they just took something that a lot of people liked about another platform and threw it on here, and I think that is great. As far as the other things on the slide, you got serrations, you got some slide cuts. They're pretty cool. The serrations are pretty aggressive. I do like those. Nothing super crazy, nothing fantastic, but to me, that's the biggest thing going on with the slide. Now with the barrel, I have heard a lot of negative things about right here. It is basically a chamber indicator to see if you have a round right here. There's a little slot. And if you've already seen videos about this firearm, you know about this little thing. A lot of people say that it basically will block your red dot because of all the carbon buildup. I've got over 1,000 rounds in this thing, and I've not seen really any issues. So I guess it just kind of depends on ammo and other cases, but I've not really seen much of an issue. Now, moving down to the grip, the frame itself. Magpul did a lot of cool things with this thing. So the first thing that I really like is, let me actually first say that I am a Glock guy. I do love Glocks, and the Glock angle, the Glock grip doesn't bother me so bad because I've shot them for so long. However, there are better options, and Magpul really kind of hit it out of the ballpark with this one because they did make it a little steeper. I believe this is a 20.5 degree angle. Glocks are, I think, 22. And so they did make it a little steeper. And what that ends up doing is for presentation, you're able to punch out and it's a little easier. It's a lot more intuitive. Again, they basically took the ideas of the end user, what they're already doing, such as an undercut. Pretty much everybody undercuts their pistols. That's going to allow you to get higher onto the pistol grip. So they ended up putting a bevel cut right here so that you can get high and tight on that grip. The other thing that I like is that they already put basically a feed ramp in the magwell. So faster reloads, and the magwell itself is flared. So that's nice. Again, it just adds to what people were already doing with the Glock 19, and Magpul just went ahead and did it anyway. So that's super awesome. The other thing that I really like is basically these shelves formed into where your thumb goes. I really like that because it really helps you push out, really helps mitigate some of that recoil. So that's super cool that they put that in there. The coolest thing that I think that they did with the frame itself is that they took the idea from SIG and made this a chassis system. And what that allows you to do is basically take the chassis out and switch out the frame or the grips or whatever the case may be. There's already a number of companies that have made aftermarket frames for this thing. The beauty behind that is it just adds to the modularity and the customization of this pistol itself. And you typically, the grip, the frame itself is the serialized part. Well, the fire control, I believe it's the fire control insert is what, Ruger calls it. Basically, you pop that out and you can just put a new frame in there. And what's very interesting is that these frames from Magpul are 40. That is unheard of. That is actually a very good value. And they're supposed to be coming out with a more compact and then the full size frame to make it more like a Glock 45 for the big hands, or for like a duty rated pistol. So I think that is really cool that they've basically taken everything that people already do to their Glocks and then just added it on there. Then they looked at the market and took some of the more popular handguns and said, well, that's cool on that one. That's cool on that one. Let's put it all together, and Bob's your uncle. It makes a super cool and reliable, customizable, and modular handgun, which is super awesome. And so that's it. That's basically the RXM. And I use the term "that's it" very lightly because as you can see, that there's a ton of features packed into this thing that just makes it very appealing, especially when you talk and consider the price point. We'll get into that in a minute. But as far as the review goes, there's other reviews out there, and I can't really do this thing justice compared to some of the other gun tubers out there. Now, Shark Coast Tactical did one showing the modularity and the customization on it. Very good review. Brass Facts did a 3,000 round count on it. Ran through some reliability issues or problems, which he really, if I remember right, he didn't really find too many on it. Regular Guy Training did a 6,000 round count. I thought that was pretty good. As far as reliability goes, though, Gun Talk Media did a review and they got out to 8,200 rounds. Now that 8,200 rounds was pretty much shot nonstop. They literally had people in line just making a big circle. They had people loading magazines nonstop. And when the gun got too hot, they dunked it in water to cool it down, shook it off, popped in a magazine, and went back to work. It was kind of a brutal torture test, and it really kind of ran this thing through the paces, and there were no malfunctions, which I thought was very good. So it does show the reliability of this thing. which again, from a Glock Gen 3 clone or just the Glock Gen 3, they are stupid reliable. They're almost aggravatingly reliable. And so when you base it on that ecosystem, you're going to end up getting a killer gun. Now, as far as for me and my malfunctions, I really only had two, and they wasn't really for the gun himself. It was I think it had to do with the magazine, a combination of the magazine and the ammo that I was using, as well as this larger slide lock lever. Now, the only issue that I had for the ammo was on the last round of the P-mags that come with this gun and the Honey Badger 100 grain plus P. For whatever reason, the last round would get a failure to feed. It would just stop at the feed ramp and it wouldn't continue up. Now, I'm sure that has to do with the geometry of that particular round itself and the flutes cut into it. But for whatever reason, it was only the last round. Now, when I switched to a Glock magazine, I was getting it maybe 50% of the time, but it happened every time with the P-mag. Nothing against the P-mag necessarily, because they have come a long way, but just that's something to consider. That's the only ammo that I got any malfunction. All the other hollow points that I ran through it and all the other full metal jackets, they ran flawlessly. No big deal, no problem. So really that was the only thing. The other thing that I ran into is this extended or bigger slide lock. Now, I like to hold high and tight on these things. And so my big meaty thumb, I think, was pinching this slide lock down and it wasn't allowing it to push up, which obviously that follower inside the magazine pushes that up at the end when you run out of ammo. So it's not the magazine. I've tried a couple different magazines. So you can see it moving when I push the magazine in. So it is getting pressure. And I mean, obviously it should. I mean, these work pretty good. If I can keep it still enough. So yeah, you can see it move up. I think the issue though, let me see if I can focus this, is the shape of the lever itself. You can see that it curves up. And I think what's happening is even little bit of pressure that's applied right here is basically hitting this one piece down here, this where it contacts the frame. And that kind of multiplies all that pressure into that one area, and essentially it digs into the frame and doesn't allow it to come up and lock the slide back. That's the only thing I can really think of. I even shot it one-handed and just barely kind of set my thumb right here, and it did the same thing. It failure to lock just because that little bit of friction. Now, the cool thing is, obviously, again, this is a Gen 3, so it is going to be easy to, swap that part out. So I'm not super worried about it, but for me, that's the biggest issue I found with this thing on this particular one anyway, especially if you're going to shoot pretty high and tight. And, basically that thumb is covering up every bit of that, and I'm pressing into the frame. So I think that's definitely what's causing the issue. I don't have that problem with regular slide locks because they are flat. They're kind of out of the way, and whatever pressure is applied across the whole surface instead of this one area, and it doesn't really dig in. So a little bit of work to that. Other than that, 1,000 rounds. It is slightly ammo dependent. Like I said, that one type, the Honey Badger, that was the only issue I had, and I don't even really run that much, so not too concerned about that. So let's talk about value real quick. As I said, there's a lot of Glock Gen 3 clones out there. So you've got Shadow System, Faxon, got the FX19, I believe, Matrix Arms, Zev. Those are going to be in the 1,000 to 1,200 range. Then you have, was it Lone Wolf and Alpha Foxtrot, I believe. They're in the 1,000, maybe 800. And then down on the lower end, you have Adams Arms and Dagger, the PSA Dagger. And so that's where this is going to compete. So I guess the closest, Adams Arms is pretty low. The closest to this would be the PSA Dagger. They both come in at around the 400 mark. But this, with the features that come on it, definitely is blowing the PSA Dagger out of the water. Nothing against the PSA Dagger itself. I actually have one and I do enjoy shooting it, but with the features that come on this already, again, with the optics cut, actually optics ready, the different options for the frame, and switching those out, the full-on modularity. I mean, I just think that this thing, for the value of it, just blows everything else out of the water, in my opinion. Now, all that brings us to the actual issue at hand. If you don't already know, there was a lawsuit, many lawsuits, against Glock. Also, California banned all Glock-style firearms, so including this. And a lot of people said that they bent the knee. They basically was like, you know what, okay, we'll stop making this type of firearm, which is really the trigger bar, the trigger mechanism, the cruciform, because, again, not to get into the whole thing of it, but you could put a illegal Glock switch into the back of this thing and convert it into a fully automatic machine gun. And first of all, that's illegal by federal law already. So instead of holding illegal people, criminals, accountable for their own actions, they went ahead and went after Glock. Like I said, I think there was a total of 11, maybe 12. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. I think there was like 11 or 12 lawsuits against Glock, just Glock themselves. And then, like I said, California banned him. And that's a huge revenue from a whole state that they were basically losing. And so a lot of people said that they bent the knee. And from a business aspect, I can kind of see why they bent the knee, because it would have been hundreds of millions of dollars to go through these lawsuits. However, they are a huge corporation and they could have potentially went and fought it out. So I'm not going to get into which one, if they bent the knee or they could have fought it out, whatever the case may be. I'm not getting into that. The fact is that this is happening. Because let's use Ford, for example. If you go buy a Ford and then you go immediately to the bar to celebrate because you got a brand new cool pickup truck and you have a few drinks, and a few drinks turn into a lot more drinks, and then you ended up getting into that brand new Ford and driving away from the bar. And because you are driving under the influence at this point, you end up crashing and killing a family of 4. That's terrible. You shouldn't do that. Everybody knows that. And everybody also knows that Ford does not get sued because a drunk driver that was driving their vehicle killed a family of 4. That's just not how it happens. Well, guess what? Gun manufacturers have that same coverage. Glock should have never been sued because of the PLCAA, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. That protects firearm manufacturers from being sued from frivolous lawsuits when criminals do criminal things with their product. So, in a sense, yeah, they did kind of bend a knee, in my opinion, only because this never should have happened anyway. These lawsuits never should have gone through. Why does that matter about the Ruger? Well, just the other day, Ruger got a letter stating kind of the same thing from Everytown for Gun Safety. If you don't know who they are, they suck. I wouldn't even bother about them. But anyway, so they basically reached out to Ruger and said, hey, you're making illegal firearms and you suck, and we want answers on how you're going to address this issue. Now, I ended up getting a hold of Ruger just to say, look, I love what you guys did with this gun. I love the modularity. I love the customization. I love the ecosystem that you built it around. And this has, because of all those things, this has become one of my favorite handguns that I own. I then went on to tell them that I agree with lawful commerce and that I disagree with theories that criminalize a manufacturer due to people misusing or unlawfully using their product. Now, I wasn't expecting a reply from Ruger, but I got one anyway, which I thought was really cool that they just took the time to reply. Now, more than likely, this reply is just a generic reply that they already made up and sent to all the people that is reaching out to them over this. But I found their reply to be very interesting, and it reads, "Hello, David. We at Ruger take great pride in our reputation as a model of safety and corporate responsibility. We are proud of our history of developing and selling robust, reliable, safe, and lawful products, including the RXM pistol, to our law-abiding customers. As our corporate motto states, we are arms makers for responsible citizens. we condemn the criminal misuse of firearms. I'm not going to tell you what to think about that letter. You read the same thing that I did, so you can come to your own conclusion on what you think might happen. That said, in my opinion, it does kind of sound like Ruger is going to pick up the torch where Glock should have and potentially fight back on this. At least that's what I'm hoping. And I think if they do, they're going to have quite a bit of support. I cannot confirm this, but as far as I know, Shadow System and PSA got the same letter that Ruger did. And so now you have 3 companies that are getting these letters and basically almost warning of lawsuits against them, just like Glock. So if you end up getting a collaboration with all these different manufacturers that have Glock clones that fight back, I think that there's a big chance that we're going to win. On top of that, this is where it gets so aggravating. They shouldn't have to do any of this. They should not have to do any of this. So of course they should win, but they shouldn't have to win because none of this, it's just so mind-boggling and aggravating because of the PLCAA, the PLACA, that was put in place specifically so that firearm manufacturers does not get sued because of the end user doing illegal things with their product. That's what it's there for. Yet gun grabbers are pushing the envelope, and if you give them an inch, they will take 2 million miles. And so that's why this is all so aggravating. None of this should happen. None of this should be happening, and it's just infuriating that we are where we are. Now, a lot of people are aggravated at Glock. That's your prerogative. A lot of people are aggravated at the anti-2A movement and all of their bobbleheads. And I get it. That totally makes sense. You should be aggravated at them. But you know who else you should be aggravated at? You should be aggravated at the most 2A friendly DOJ that this country has ever seen. Pam Bondi should be stepping up and say, actually, the PLCAA is in effect and you can't do this. This is a frivolous lawsuit and every one of these lawsuits should be thrown out. Yet she's not. So what can you do about it? Well, the first thing you can do is if you have a Dagger, if you have a Shadow System, if you have an RXM, reach out to the manufacturer. Tell them that you really do enjoy that gun. Tell them that you support lawful commerce and that you think that all this is pretty stupid. Second thing you can do is get onto Twitter, on X, whatever it is now, and reach out to the DOJ. Tell them to do their job. If they're going to self-proclaim themselves as the most friendliest 2A DOJ ever, then tell them to do their job, because this is ridiculous. The last thing you can do is share this video with someone that might get something out of it. If you know someone that has a Ruger RXM or a PSA Dagger or any other Glock clone or a Glock or a gun in general, or is just passionate about the Second Amendment, share this video with them and get them into the fight if they're not already in the fight for our Second Amendment right. I believe that's all I got for you guys. If you like this video, hit that like button right down there. And then the subscribe button, that helps out tremendously. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you liked what you see here today. Honestly, I really want to know what you guys think. More importantly, more than anything, I want to know what you guys think. So leave me a comment below. What do you think of that letter? Do you think Ruger is gearing up for a fight? Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you guys. I think that's it. Until next time, peace out. Love you guys. Take care.